लो जी, अपने भी चाय आ गई।
हाँ देख ले, मैं बुढ़ा रख गया चेक कलर दी और रेड चेक दी शर्ट पाई इधर मुंडे।
लो जी सर, ये हो गया। यूट्यूब स्टार्ट हो गया। एक मिनट में इधर क्लाउड पे भी कर दूं। चलो सर, मैं ऑफिशियली स्टार्ट कर रहा हूं। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, आई वेलकम यू ऑल ऑन दिस 6 डेज प्रोग्राम। सबसे पहले मैं बत्रा जी का स्वागत करता हूं, जो हमारे जीएसटी गुरु हैं, और साथ में जो हमारा आज का जो कोर्स है इसको इनोग्रेट भी कर रहे हैं, और ओपनिंग स्पीकर भी हैं। जैसे ओपनिंग बैट्समैन होता है ना तेंदुलकर और द्रविड़, ऐसे ही बत्रा जी हमारे आज के ओपनिंग स्पीकर हैं और इसको सेशन को इनोग्रेट भी कर रहे हैं। और साथ में आज हमारे पीयूष बांसल जी और गौरव गुप्ता जी, ये हमारे मॉडरेटर कोऑर्डिनेटर पूरे प्रोग्राम के यही हैं। गौरव जी कहीं फंसे हुए हैं, वो आ जाएंगे थोड़ी देर में। और पीयूष जी ही मेनली हैंडल करेंगे 6 दिन। ये खुद फैकल्टी भी हैं बहुत अच्छे जीएसटी के, इसीलिए ये आपके जो भी क्वेश्चन है वो बेटर वे से जो फैकल्टीज हैं उनको प्रेजेंट भी कर पाएंगे। और जो कोई अगर फैकल्टी इन केस ऑफ हरी में होगी तो ये आपके क्वेश्चनों को रिजोल्व भी कर पाएंगे। तो पीयूष जी, आई आल्सो वेलकम यू एंड भूपिंदर दीक्षित जी। हालांकि और भी हमारे पैनलिस्ट हैं जिनको हमने लिंक भेजे हैं। अगर कोई और भी आना चाहता होगा पैनलिस्ट में तो वो रिक्वेस्ट भेज दे, तो हम उनको कन्वर्ट कर देंगे पैनलिस्ट में। तो आई अश्विनी जिंदल वेलकम यू ऑल ऑन दिस 6 days कोर्स ऑर्गेनाइज्ड बाय चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट एसोसिएशन, जीएसटी एंड टैक्सेशन बार एंड वॉइस ऑफ सीए सपोर्ट। I am also thankful to मास्टर ब्रेन्स, जिनकी सपोर्ट से आज हम ये प्रोग्राम कर रहे हैं। हमारे 172 पार्टिसिपेंट तो अभी लॉग इन कर चुके हैं, बाकी लॉग इन कर रहे हैं। तो ये जो 6 days का प्रोग्राम है, ये हमने एक डिफरेंट काइंड का इस बार सोचा है करने के लिए। क्या है कि हमने आज से पहले जीएसटी बेसिक लेवल, जीएसटी एडवांस लेवल कंप्लीट कोर्स टॉपिक वाइज चैप्टर वाइज भी किया है। इसके अलावा एक कोर्स हमने किया था इंडस्ट्री वाइज, उसमें सारी इंडस्ट्रीज कवर की थी 5-6 दिन में। ये फर्स्ट टाइम है कि हमने एक मिक्सचर ऑफ कोर्स सर्टिफिकेशन कोर्स बनाया है। अगर आपकी 6 डे में से मिनिमम 5 डे अटेंडेंस होगी तभी हम आपको सर्टिफिकेट इशू करेंगे। अदरवाइज लर्निंग तो आप चाहे आज की ले लो, बाद में 2 दिन छोड़ के फिर तीसरे दिन आ जाओ, चौथे दिन आ जाओ, ठीक है ना। तो दैट इज अलाउड। आप कभी भी आओ, मतलब कहते हैं 1 दिन अटेंड करो, 2 दिन करो, 4 दिन करो, सारा करो। हम तो चाहेंगे कि सारा कोर्स करो। बड़ा अच्छा कोर्स डिजाइन किया है, लेकिन सर्टिफिकेट तभी मिलेगा अगर 6 में से 5 दिन, मतलब रादर आपके 12 घंटे में से 10 घंटे अगर मिनिमम अटेंड होगा। वो हमारे जब हम रिपोर्ट डाउनलोड करेंगे हमारे सिस्टम वाले, अगर 10 आवर्स मिनिमम अटेंड होगा तभी आपको सर्टिफिकेट इशू करेंगे, अदरवाइज नहीं करेंगे। अदरवाइज आपको सिर्फ लर्निंग आर्जी मिलेंगे। तो ये जो कोर्स है ये हमने 2 चीजों का मिक्सचर बनाया है, एक तो इंडस्ट्री का, एक टॉपिक्स का, जो क्रिटिकल टॉपिक्स हैं। आज की डेट में अगर हम देखें क्रिटिकल टॉपिक जो हैं वो जहां तो आईटीसी पे आके रुक गए हैं, मेनली आईटीसी, देन लिटिगेशन में नोटिसेस जो आपको शो कॉज नोटिसेस आ रहे हैं, ई वे, ई इनवाइसिंग, एंड देन जीएसटी रिटर्न्स। जीएसटी रिटर्न्स में जो इशू है, जहां कोई रजिस्ट्रेशन में स्पेसिफिक इशू हो, कोई ऐसा सच नहीं है, लेकिन अगर कोई रजिस्ट्रेशन में इशू है, देन डिपार्टमेंटल ऑडिट जो आपका ऑन साइट ऑडिट हो रहा है उसके रिलेटेड, ये आपके रहेंगे क्रिटिकल टॉपिक्स जो हमारी डे टू डे प्रैक्टिस में डेली हमें काम आते हैं। उसके बाद जो इंडस्ट्री है, इंडस्ट्री में मेन होटल एंड हॉस्पिटल। हॉस्पिटल में कुछ एक आइटमें कवर होने के बाद, जैसे हमारी फैकल्टीज बताएंगे कि जो रूम रेंट उन्होंने फिक्स कर दिया कि इसके ऊपर जीएसटी लगेगा, तो हॉस्पिटल नेट में आ गए हैं। देन फॉरेक्स, टूर एंड ट्रेवल, इनमें बहुत इश्यू रहते हैं। सबसे ज्यादा हॉट टॉपिक है रियल एस्टेट एंड कंस्ट्रक्शन। देन फूड आइटम्स, ऑल्दो ये सेटल हो गया काफी हद तक, क्योंकि इसमें जो 25 किलो वाला, 30 किलो वाला मेट्रोलॉजी एक्ट, ये वो बड़ा कुछ था, तो किस चीज पे लगना है, किस पे नहीं लगना है, इसमें भी बड़े इश्यूज हैं। देन जीटीए, जीटीए में बहुत चेंजेस हुई हैं, जो बेसिक एग्जम्पशनें खत्म हुई हैं, 750 वाली, 1500 वाली, ये सारी चीजें हमारी फैकल्टीज आपको अपडेट करेंगी। और हमने स्पेशल एम्फेसिस इसमें दिया है कि जो विद इन 1 ईयर अमेंडमेंट्स हुई हैं, हम अपने फैकल्टीज को भी रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे कि उनको स्पेसिफिकली अपडेट में डाल दें, कि उनका स्पेशल एम्फेसिस दे दें कि ये पिछले 1 साल में अमेंडमेंट्स हुई हैं। ये तो है टॉपिक जो हम 6 दिन में कवर करने जा रहे हैं। और फैकल्टीज भी वन ऑफ द मास्टर्स, जैसे आज तो हमारे साथ खुद साक्षात गुरु हैं जीएसटी के अशोक बत्रा जी, इसके बाद एडवोकेट सीएस संदीप गोयल जी। आई फील सॉरी कि मेरे को रिप्लेस करना पड़ा, जेके मित्तल जी को भी मैंने रिक्वेस्ट किया था, लेकिन जेके मित्तल जी ने वेबिनार बंद कर दिया। वो कहते हैं जिंदल साहब सेमिनार पे बुला लो। मैं कहा सर सेमिनार के लिए पहले मेरे को बजट इकट्ठा करना पड़ेगा 4-5 लाख का, हमारे पास इतने पैसे नहीं है, हम तो ये सारे फ्री प्रोग्राम चलाते हैं। क्योंकि उन्होंने वेबिनार बंद कर दिए, वो अब सिर्फ फिजिकल मोड में ही आते हैं। तो उनकी जगह पे हमारे साथ आ रहे हैं एडवोकेट सीए संदीप गोयल जी, जो पंजाब हरियाणा हाई कोर्ट में लिटिगेशन को ही डील करते हैं, स्पेसिफिकली जितने भी एससीएन है। देन सीए अर्चना जैन जी, सीए आदित्य अग्रवाल जी, देन सीए अरूप दास गुप्ता जी एंड सीए सिद्धांत पाठक जी। और इसके अलावा पीयूष जी ऑल ऑफ द डे अवेलेबल है। कोई भी क्वेरीज के लिए अगर आपकी इन टॉपिक से हटके भी होगी 0 आवर्स में, जो हम लास्ट में 10-15 मिनट अगर किसी ने एक्सटेंड करना होगा तो वो 10 मिनट हम लास्ट में एक्सटेंड कर दिया करेंगे 6 o'clock के बाद, अगर कोई आपकी स्पेसिफिक क्वेरी होगी तो। विद दीज वर्ड्स मैं वेलकम करता हूं सब आप सब लोगों का कि आप इतने हाई नंबर में रजिस्ट्रेशनें हुई, हमारी लगभग 1000+ रजिस्ट्रेशनें हमारी हो गई हैं और मेंबर धीरे धीरे ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं हमारे साथ। तो मैं आप सबका स्वागत करता हूं। और आज हमारे डे 1 में जो हमारा क्रिटिकल टॉपिक है वो है आईटीसी। आईटीसी सबसे मोस्ट क्रिटिकल टॉपिक है, उसके लिए हमने अशोक बत्रा जी को रिक्वेस्ट की है। तो मैं शॉर्ट में अशोक बत्रा जी को इंट्रोड्यूस भी कर दूं। पीयूष जी आपने डाउनलोड किया हुआ है बत्रा जी का और प्रोफाइल? पीयूष जी आप म्यूट पे हैं।
सर मैंने डाउनलोड नहीं किया हुआ, लेकिन वो 1 मिनट में हो जाएगा। वैसे भी बत्रा जी के बारे में तो हम सब जानते हैं, वो उसी हिसाब से भी बोल सकते हैं।
चलो नहीं, वैसे चलो मैं थोड़ा सा इंट्रोड्यूस कर दूं। अशोक बत्रा जी इज क्वालिफाइड इन द 1981। सब्सिक्वेंटली ही बिकम ए लॉ ग्रेजुएट इन 2009। मतलब काला कोट इन्होंने 2009 में पहना। उसके बाद ही इज एल्यूमनाई ऑफ एसआरसीसी, मोस्ट रिप्यूटेड कॉलेज इन द कंट्री रादर एशिया। Presently, he is a senior partner in the AK Batra and Associate, a leading chartered accountant firm in the northern India, established in 1982. He has brilliant academic credentials and professional expertise of nearly 4 decades in the diverse area such as accounting. Rather, मैं तो ये कहूँगा कि जब से सर्विस टैक्स आया है, सर्विस टैक्स को भी आज की डेट में 27 ईयर्स हो गए और जीएसटी को 27-8 ईयर्स। 27-8 ईयर्स तो continuously he is in this and mainly in the litigation, and he has authored many books. मेरे पास तो बत्रा जी की बुक्स आ जाती हैं तो मैं इनको कहता हूं कि सर मैंने रिलीज कर दी है, तो हर बार फीस भी बढ़ा देता हूं 10%। इस बार और बढ़ा देनी है, 20% कर देनी है कि जो रिलीजिंग फीस और 5 लाख से बढ़ा के 10 लाख कर देनी है सर। तो इनकी बड़ी अच्छी 2 बुक्स जो ऑलवेज, हालांकि टॉपिक के ऊपर भी इन्होंने कई बार लिखी हैं, रिफंड्स के ऊपर जहां एक दो और लिखी थी। जो मेन बुक्स है लॉ एंड प्रोसीजर्स, जो एनुअली पब्लिश होती है अशोक बत्रा जी की, और देन रेडी रेकनर। रेडी रेकनर तो आपको पता है कि ये लॉ ही साल में 4 बार चेंज हो जाता है, तो इनकी बुक भी 4 बार आई जाती है अपडेटेड। ऑलवेज आपको अपडेटेड मिलेगी जीएसटी रेडी रेकनर। 2 मेन बुक्स जो अशोक बत्रा जी की है। इसके अलावा ही इज कंसल्टेंट टू मैनी बिग हाउसेस as well as faculty to many big institute, चाहे इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स ऑफ इंडिया है, आईसीएसआई है, आईसीडब्ल्यूए है, चाहे चैम्बर्स हैं। हर चैम्बर्स में अशोक बत्रा जी एंगेज्ड हैं और बहुत बड़े बड़े इनके क्लाइंट्स हैं जिनका ये ऑलरेडी लिटिगेशन मैटर हैंडल कर रहे हैं। ज्यादा टाइम ना लेते हुए मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा सीए अशोक बत्रा जी को टू काइंडली स्टार्ट द डेलिब्रेशन ऑन आईटीसी।
Thank you, Ashwin Jindal ji. At the outset, I would like to thank CA Association, VOCA, for providing this opportunity wherein I can share my views on this very interesting topic of input tax credit with my professional colleagues. Friends, I am sharing my screen now and I am sure you'll be able to look at the PPT. I think it is visible to all.
Yes sir.
Yes sir.
First of all, what is input tax credit? This is the amount of tax which is being charged in any supply received by the recipient. And rather than claiming it as an expense of capitalizing the same, he put it into a different account, ITC recoverable, and used that amount for the payment of tax. Undoubtedly, I will make it clear that ITC cannot be used for the payment of interest, penalty, fee, or any other sum. If we consider that, then otherwise it is a current asset having this limitation only. Now there is another controversy which has been going on, whether pre-deposit can be made through input tax credit. Now there was a judgment against, then there was a judgment of Mumbai High Court in favor. I think the department must come forward and clarify this issue. In my humble opinion, it can be used for the discharge of even pre-deposit amount. When I was asked to speak on this topic, I was thinking, should I address as if I am talking to my professional brothers who have recently joined this GST, or should I take the technical issues, that is advanced level? I received one message in this chat box wherein Meghna Kalra, he has suggested guys must speak from the beginning as if they know nothing about ITC. But friends, I cannot take that kind of a situation also. So I'll try to be simple, as well as I'll try to raise the issues which are technical, and I'll keep on raising when I am discussing the basic law. जैसे मैंने अभी आपसे कहा, it is a settled proposition that ITC cannot be used for the payment of tax. It can be used for the payment of tax, but cannot be used for the payment of interest, penalty, fee, or any other sum. Then there is a controversy with regard to whether pre-deposit can be made through ITC. There is a judgment against us of the High Court. There is a judgment in favor of us, Mumbai High Court. And subsequently, another High Court has also stated you can discharge. So Odisha High Court, which was against, that is being distinguished by Mumbai High Court, and it's a later judgment. In my humble opinion, we can do that, but there are technical issues into this. What will happen to the existing appeal, where I have already discharged the pre-deposit through the ITC? I am sure this issue will go up to the GST Council, and they will issue the suitable instructions guiding both the profession as well as the commercial world, and of course their officers. Then friends, non-claim of ITC result into minimum 70% loss, because as I told you, what is ITC? When I don't expense it. If I expense it, I get reduction in my income tax liability. But in case I don't expense, then I use the full amount against the liability on my outward supplies, meaning thereby the tax which I have collected from my customer, I'll reduce this amount and pay the balance. An example, a chartered accountant, 100 rupees invoice, 18 rupees GST. If we claim 118 as an expense, then depending upon his slab, etc., he will save income tax on 18 rupees. But in case he claimed this 18 rupees as credit, then he has collected 100 rupees from the client, he will pay 82 rupees to the government. Claiming excess credit than what you are entitled to and less claim of credit, both are very technical aspect. As I told you, if I don't claim, I lose 70% of the credit minimum. And if I wrongly claim the credit for which I was not eligible, then there can be two consequences. One, I am liable to pay that ITC along with interest and penalties. Number two, there are certain supplies on which there is a condition that you cannot avail the credit. And in case I claim the credit in those cases, then the concessional rate of tax benefit can be denied to me and the demand can be proposed at a full rate. For example, if I'm providing a transportation service by GTA, opting that I will not claim the credit, I'm discharging my liability at concessional rate of 5%. In case I wrongly claim, the department can create a demand at 18% on my whole turnover. And it can be a very huge amount. Normally, I used to explain it with a set of examples, but looking to the time constraint, I am not explaining it. I hope you must have understood it now. If I have wrongly claimed the credit, it will be subject to interest, penalty, and the amount to be recovered. And in case it is a concessional rate of tax is applicable on your outward supply, and you inadvertently or advertently claim the credit, then that concessional credit can be denied to you, which can result into a very huge demand. So we need to be very, very careful. So now, coming to the provisions which have been contained in CGST Act, we all know that CGST Act and SGST Act both have been defined in the same phraseology. So we will be using the CGST law and we will be quoting the section which are in the CGST Act. Chapter 5 contains the provision from 16 to 21. 61 is eligibility, 17 is proportion of credit, 18 is credit in special condition, then IST. Similarly, these 5 sections we intend to discuss if the time permits. Then is a very important section 155. Normally people don't pay attention to this section, but this section is so crucial because it says when you are claiming any credit, then the onus to prove that you are eligible for the credit is on the assessee, not on the department. Friends, abhi actually summon की बात कर रहे थे, notices की बात कर रहे थे. Wherever the department intend to collect tax from you, the onus is on the department to prove that this is the supply you have made which is taxable and you are liable to pay the tax which you have failed to pay. Similarly, when the government is issuing summon to you under section 73 or 74, we all know 74 can be issued in 4 situations. 73, 74 both can be issued in 4 situations: non-payment of tax, short payment of tax, erroneous claim of refund, and wrong availment or utilization of credit, which is the topic of the day. If it is because of fraud, collusion, willful misstatement, suppression of act, then 74 is invoked. And friends, in 74, the onus to prove that this credit has been claimed by way of fraud, willful misstatement, or suppression, now there are 3 terms only, is on the department. Unlike 155, where the burden to prove that I am eligible is on me, if the department alleges that you have claimed this ITC due to fraud, willful misstatement, or suppression, then onus is on the department to prove. Earlier on, if you look at the interest part also, then section 50 subsection 1 talk about interest on the amount which we fail to pay till the date when we discharge that liability. And rate of interest was 18%, and 53 where the wrong availment of credit is there, then the rate of interest is 24. But then in Finance Act 2022, they amended this section, and now that section need to be notified. Now that 24% interest is being dispensed with. So I am very much sure in couple of months that section will be notified. So in my humble opinion, now the rate of interest is only 18%. Section 49 relating to payment of tax, and 41 with regard to availment of tax credit or other important section which one must refer to and read in case they want to understand the concept of ITC more clearly. So friends, now we are moving to the definition of input tax. We all understand whatever is my liability to pay the tax, the whole amount becomes available to the recipient as a credit. So whatever I am liable to pay and what I am entitled to get the credit are absolutely the same amounts, IGST. Then reverse charge under section 9, subsection 3 and 4. We all understand that. I am not going to explain it right now for the sake of saving time. Similarly, under IGST Act 5.3 and 5.4, there are 2 sections where we will discharge the liability of reverse charge. So let me tell you that even if we pay tax under reverse charge, I am eligible to claim the credit. If otherwise, I am entitled to. When I am saying otherwise entitled to, means I must satisfy the condition of section 16 primarily, because the availment of credit has been dealt in section 16, and that is the section which I will be dealing in detail. Then it says the tax payable under the provision of subsection 3 and 4 of 9 of the respective SGST Act, state ka jo tax hai, then 3 and 4 and 7 of respective union territory tax. So that means all the taxes which I pay on my outward supplies, I am eligible to claim the credit under ITC, because the same amount is being paid by the recipient, and that becomes input tax in his hands. But certainly it does not include the tax which is being paid under the composition scheme. So therefore, composition scheme dealer is not allowed to issue the tax invoice. So when you are buying goods for the composition dealer, you are not paying any tax, because he cannot show any amount as tax charge from you. He has to pay certain amount depending upon the scheme to the government, but on the invoice, he cannot show that this is the amount of tax. And similarly, once that tax is not there, he is not permitted to issue the tax invoice also. So therefore, when you are making purchase from the composition dealer, wherein the sale consideration may include the element of tax, but then you cannot claim credit for the same. Now, credit is available of input, input service, and capital goods. So these terms have been defined. They are there before you on the slide. 219 capital goods and input 259. If you look at it, they say any goods other than capital goods are input, and capital goods means goods, the value of which has been capitalized. So meaning thereby all goods, depending upon the activity which has been carried out by the supplier, it may be a capital good for someone, but maybe a revenue item for someone. For example, if I'm a car dealer, car may be a current asset for me and it is a goods only. But when I am buying the car, then I am capitalizing its value, it becomes capital goods. The earlier on, the distinction under the rest-while GST law was quite different, because the provision with regard to the availment of capital goods were different as compared to the system which was available on credit of taxes paid on the input. But in GST law, thankfully, both these goods, either their capital or input, we can claim the credit in one go in the month in which I am receiving the invoice for the same. So obviously, once I receive the invoice, then second condition is I must have received the goods. So in the month in which the good invoice and goods are being received. And another beauty is, so far as this credit is concerned, you can avail the credit while discharging the liability for the same month. It was not there in service that you have to wait for 1 month to claim the credit. Now, you receive the invoice in the month of April. Goods have also been received. While discharging the liability in the month of April, that may fall by 20th of next month or whatever the date is due, depending upon your status, then I can use that payment. So there is no blockage of funds also. Then you can ask me if there is no difference between ITC on inputs and capital goods, then why this distinction has been made? This distinction has been made not with reference to ITC, but in various other provisions of law. For example, when I'm selling the capital goods, how I'm supposed to discharge the liability? 5% depreciation per quarter. That means the life of the capital goods has been determined at 5 years, irrespective of the nature of capital goods. If I sell it after 2 years, so it is the 60% value on which I am liable to pay the tax. But in case the transactional value is more than 60%, then I have to discharge the liability on the excess amount which I am receiving. Giving you an example, 100 रुपए की मशीनरी थी, 18 रुपए टैक्स था, 2 साल बाद बेची, तो मुझे 60 रुपए टैक्स देना पड़ेगा अगर मशीनरी 55 की बिकी है, और अगर मशीनरी 65 रुपए की बिकी है तो मुझे टैक्स 65 रुपए पे देना. Now look at the definition of input service. Any service So that means any service which is being used in the furtherance of business. So now all these three terms having a very broad definitions and meaning. Input and capital goods means any goods, either you capitalize or don't capitalize it. Input service means any service. But then these are two terminology which are being used, which are important. Used or intended to be used. It is not used. In the earlier law, it was only used. Now it is intended to be used. Reason is very obvious. The government want to cross-verify the credit on invoice to invoice basis. मैंने 100 कंप्यूटर खरीदे, 70 मैंने पुट टू यूज कर दिए अप टू मार्च, 30 मैंने पुट टू यूज की इन द नेक्स्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर. अगर सरकार पुट टू यूज की कंडीशन पे ये क्रेडिट देती तो क्या सरकार के पास ये पॉसिबल था? वैसे ही आपने देखा वॉल्यूम इतना ज्यादा है कि उनके 1, 2, 3 कभी एप्लीकेबल ही नहीं हो पाए. सो ऑब्वियसली इफ दिस intended to be used word would not have been there, then the credit would have been allowed on the basis of usage. Then these kind of transactions would have put a lot of problem on the government how to verify each and every invoice. So they have said used or intended to be used. अब आपने 100 कंप्यूटर ले लिए, आप इसको इंटेंड करना चाहते हैं यूज करने के लिए, you are entitled to claim the credit in the month in which you have received the goods and invoice. You might have got the credit earlier, but in any case, then each and every invoice can be mapped by the government. This is what the government is doing now. Then it has to be in the course of furtherance of business. In the course of business means ordinarily when I am carrying out a business, why the term furtherance is there? I have tried to do a lot of research on furtherance. Some of the article and some of the dictionaries says furtherance means advancing the interest. Somebody says to achieve the aim of the business. So furtherance word has to be given some meaning, and it is expensive. If you read, it is in the course or furtherance. So I normally give an example. Let us say there is a pharma company. They intend to develop a drug for corona. So that is their aim, to eradicate corona. But unfortunately, they are not able to have breakthrough, and that drug is not being developed by them. Whether they get the credit on all the expenditure incurred for the development of drugs. In my humble opinion, yes, because that was the furtherance of business. I was already a pharma company doing certain other things. Similarly, there can be number of examples wherein if I do something, let us say I am a chartered accountant, I want to set up another research unit in, let us say, a law, in which normally chartered accountants are not appearing. Let us say competition law or any other law, or maybe this digital currency law. So in that case, if I am setting up an office for that purpose, recruiting the employees, incurring a lot of expenditure which is subject to GST, but unfortunately I could not get any client for that. In my humble opinion, even then, this credit which I have claimed on the expenditure which I have incurred for the setting up and starting the business of another line or another law for which I could not find the customer, my credit cannot be denied to me because it is in the furtherance of business. I'll explain this concept further also. Now let's move further. Now I am going to set up certain very important statements which has got a lot of practical usefulness, and I'll explain you how. But these principles which was settled in the earlier law, then they are applicable even under the GST law. Input tax credit is indivisible. So once you have availed the credit, you can carry it forward for unlimited period. If you don't want to surrender your number, you want to carry it for 10 years, you can do that. And now we have seen there have been a lot more litigation with reference to trans 1, trans 2. Ultimately, Supreme Court suo motu pass an order. If there have been certain technical glitches or they could not file the claim of ITC in trans 1 or 2, you have to open the portal which is open nowadays. So this is an indivisible right. So therefore, the government is also conscious that the credit for which the assesses eligible to claim should not be taken away so easily by the government. Then it says, no demand can be made for recovery of the SENVET which is validly earned by the SSC. ये बड़ा अच्छा एक प्रिंसिपल है, इसको मैं आगे भी एक्सप्लेन करूंगा. For example, if you are a builder and you are constructing certain flats, all the flats have been put to sale. And while you are procuring the supply, you say, because I am likely to sell all the flats before the completion, you are claiming the full credit. And at the end of the day, you are not able to sell 10 flats, there is inventory. So now the department has issued so many notices saying you are not eligible for the credit because 10 flats are for the sale of immovable property. Arise India is the case, which the citation will come in the subsequent slides, clearly proves that once I have validly availed the credit at that point of time when I was availing the credit, you cannot deny me the credit because of the event subsequently happening. Even under excise law, there are cases wherein I am purchasing certain input, my product is subject to excise duty and I am claiming the credit. But once the production is completed, there is a notification these products are exempted from excise duty. Even then, the court have said at the time when he availed the input credit as per the provisions of law, we all know taxable event and time to pay the tax, these two are independent things. In service tax, taxable event was provision of service, but the payment was to be made when the advance was received, and same is the case in GST also. So here also they say that once they have availed the credit in terms of the credit rules, and that credit was absolutely legally availed, then you cannot deny it subsequently on the happening of the event. It is not an absolutely right. This is the very latest judgment of the Supreme Court, 2019 only, in the case of ALD Automotive. Because earlier on there was a lot of confusion whether it is a vested right or it is a statutory right which cannot be taken away. They say it is an absolute right, but conditional one, subject to the fulfillment of condition. In case you don't fulfill the condition, you are not entitled for the credit. Then comes a very important principle. This has lot of practical usefulness. If you are receiving, just a second, a call is important. I'll just join in a second. Hello. Hello. भैया मेरा लेक्चर चल रहा है 6 बजे के बाद बात करूँ जल्दी बोलना Sorry friends for the interruption, extremely sorry. So I was talking about I am audible now? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So I was talking about that classification cannot be challenged in the hands of the recipient. Friends, if you are receiving certain supply and they are not subject to GST and he has charged tax on that, many times a question comes whether this amount you are eligible for the credit. In my humble opinion, certainly yes. You are purchasing or acquiring or receiving certain supplies where the tax rate was 5%, but unfortunately you are charged 12%, your supplier, or there may be a confusion. In industry, some people are charging 5%, some are charging 12%, and your supplier has decided to charge at 12%. Will you be able to get the credit for 12 rupees, though it is liable to be taxed at 5%, subsequently had it so? Friends, absolutely no problem. Even if you have paid wrong tax, you are eligible for the credit and no challenge can be made with regard to the eligibility or classification. Even if we have mentioned a wrong HSN code number, you can still avail the credit. It is a settled principle. The issue is no more res integra, and number of judgments I am giving in this. I'll be sharing this PPT with VOCA, and I request Ashwini ji that they can send it to the participant in case their emails are available. No reversal of credit of unsold flat. This I have already explained it to you. If credit is available, then on the conservative basis, you must pay the tax in case of any dispute, except in the case of inverted duty structure, because in that case, it will have some financial implication. Yesterday only, we have been discussing one case. So he says, in my humble opinion, there is no liability for the payment under reverse charge because the place of supply falls outside India. It is not an import. We all understand in the case of import, supplier should be outside India, recipient should be in India, the place of supply should be in India. I said, if there is a doubt because of the nature of agreement, the clauses being contained there, because I had a huge tax liability, why should I take a risk? So whenever the question of claim of ITC comes, in my humble opinion, wherever there is a doubt but the credit is available to the recipient, you must discharge the liability. Classification cannot be challenged in the hands of the recipient. Lend to claim the credit. There is no financial implication. By doing so, you can avoid the litigation, which is very, very important. Then there are certain conditions for the availment of credit. Some of the conditions are substantial conditions, wherein you must satisfy those conditions, but some of them are procedural. I must have a duty paying document under Rule 36. No doubt about that. I'm having an invoice. But on the invoice, if there have to be certain particulars in terms of CGST Act, and some of the particulars or one or two particulars have not been specifically mentioned, they are wrongly being mentioned. In my humble opinion, your credit cannot be denied for the not following the procedural default, or for the procedural default, I should say, or minor errors on the invoices being issued by the supplier, provided you are satisfying all the substantive conditions. So one of the judgment I have given here within the agro, but there are a lot of judgments on this issue. Now, friends, after having this understood the concept in general, may I ask all of you whether this ITC is mandatory to be claimed by the recipient or it is his option? It is an option. You decide not to avail the credit, you can still choose to do so. I have seen number of chartered accountants in service tax era, because the credit used to be very minimal, they were having their own offices. So they never used to claim this credit. यार हमें किसी से दर्दी में नहीं पड़ना है, जितनी output tax liability I am paying service tax on that. So obviously I am not interested in claiming the credit. The same proposition continues in GST again. It is an option given to you. You want to utilize it, you can utilize it. For example, when we talk about the ITC on capital goods, if you want to capitalize the GST amount for the purpose of claiming depreciation, you are not eligible to claim that ITC, but still it is option given to you. So this ITC is optional. Now, friends, to whom this ITC is available and how it is different from the earlier law, I'll explain it to you now. Every registered person, first of all, you need to be registered. कई बार ये क्वेश्चन आता है कि सर बॉम्बे का SGST CGST मुझे दिल्ली में क्यों नहीं मिलता? क्योंकि ये कहता है रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन, इफ केस आई एम नॉट रजिस्टर्ड इन महाराष्ट्र, आई कैन नॉट गेट द क्रेडिट ऑफ महाराष्ट्र SGST. Secondly, the term used is not taxable person. Taxable person means a person who is liable to be registered or who is registered. That means if my turnover is subject to GST, but I fail to get myself registered, and subsequently a demand is being raised on my output tax liability, I am put to double jeopardy. Number one, I will be liable to pay tax on my outward supply, and secondly, I will not be able to get the credit. I'll give you an example. आपका टर्नओवर 50 लाख का, 40 के बाद आपने नंबर अप्लाई करना था, आप भूल गए. विद इन 30 डेज करना था. 40 लाख जब एक्सीड किया तो आपने उसके 1.5 महीने बाद किया, जब तक टर्नओवर आपका 50 लाख हो चुका था. So now you are registered. Though this turnover of 40 lakh exceeded, let us say on 30th of June, 15th August, I make an application for registration after 30 days, and by the time my turnover is 50 lakh. Once the registration will be granted, I'll be liable to discharge the liability on 50 lakhs. But the inputs which I have received, if I am a trader, must have received the goods worth rupees 30-40 lakh. No credit shall be available to me. तो 50 लाख पे 18% के हिसाब से अगर ये टैक्स है तो 9 लाख रुपए आप टैक्स जमा कराएंगे, और जो आपकी परचेज है 30 या 35 लाख की, उस पे जो आपने टैक्स दिया है 18% के हिसाब से, उसका भी आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. ऐसा रेस्ट वाले जीएसटी लॉ में नहीं था, वैट में था, सर्विस टैक्स में नहीं था, या एक्साइज में नहीं था. वहां रजिस्ट्रेशन वाज नॉट अ प्री रिक्विजिट फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ क्लेमिंग क्रेडिट. Here it is very clear that it is a prerequisite. So now, subject to such condition and restriction as may be prescribed and tied to the credit input tax, हमने discuss कर लिया, on any supply which are used or intended to be used, हमने discuss कर लिया in the course or furtherance of business. तो friends, इस अगर आप section को देखेंगे तो eligibility criteria is very wide. The credit is available on any supply of goods or services. So this is very wide definition, but don't think this is the only section. Once we proceed further, then certain restrictions and conditions will come. Another important point is, if you look at it, they are saying it is input tax charged, not chargeable. I was telling you, if a supply is subject to tax at 5%, he was liable to charge tax at 5%, but उसने 12% charge कर लिया, तो मुझे credit 12 का मिलेगा, irrespective of the fact that supply was taxable at 5% only. अगर यहाँ chargeable होता, जैसे कुछ VAT law में था, तो बड़ी प्रॉब्लम आ जाती. तो हमें अगर 12 रुपए टैक्स दिया होता, amount chargeable was 5%, I was entitled to credit only on 5%. So the government has been very liberal. They say once we have received 12 rupees from the supplier, we will allow you the credit for 12 rupees again. So this is again the example I was giving you when I started my deliberation. Classification cannot be challenged in the hands of recipient, and wherever there is a doubt, you must charge higher amount if the credit is available to the recipient, because then the litigation is being avoided. So this term charge being used here further confirm my statement. Now, when the credit is available, the credit is available in the month of purchase. One-to-one correlation is not required. Another important thing, if you remember, is it says in the course or furtherance of business. अगर आप पुराने लॉ को देखेंगे तो वैट का क्रेडिट मिलता था if the turnover of purchases being used for the purpose of making sale. सर्विस टैक्स का क्रेडिट मिलता था इनपुट सर्विस का if it is being used for the provision of output service. Excise का क्रेडिट मिलता था used to be intended for the manufacture of final product. So the credit was linked to the taxable event. Now it is not so. Credit is linked to the business. As a chartered accountant, if I am providing audit services on which I am paying a tax, I am eligible for all the input supplies received by me in carrying out my profession of chartered accountancy. It may be a soap in the washroom. It may be a waste paper bucket under my table. It may be anything. If that is being used for the purpose of business, the credit is available. So the eligibility as defined in section 16(1) is in the widest term possible, and in my humble opinion, there cannot be a wider definition than this so far as eligibility is concerned. Then conditions, as I told you, in the month of purchase, credit is available, no blockage of funds. One-to-one correlation is not required. Linked with the business, not with the taxable event. Credit can be availed even if you are setting up your office or you're closing your office. If you go to the definition of business, then opening of office and closing of office is also a activity in the course of business. In fact, this provision was being introduced and this activity being treated as a business to plug a loophole. And the loophole was, for example, you were registered in VAT earlier on. Tax was to be paid by a dealer. You are having a factory. You surrender your number, you cease to be a dealer, and thereafter you sell your machinery having turnover less than the taxable quantum. You are not paying tax on that. In order to plug that loophole, this provision is being brought and this clause is being inserted in the definition of business. But then it has resulted into a benefit to the recipient. Even if I am setting up my office, you can say, Mr. Batra, you were saying every registered person, if I am in the process of setting up an office, how will I get myself registered? Kindly read section 25, where there is a voluntary registration available. The question has come, can ITC be claimed if RCM is paid on import after show?
आवाज नहीं आ रही आपकी. अच्छा, ठीक. Okay, sir, okay.
This question is because there is a bar when we go to the condition. If the tax is being paid by the supplier after the issuance of a show cause notice, then credit is not available to the recipient, so credit may not be available. So now, I was telling you, once you close down the business, even then you are eligible for the credit. So all activities carried out. I start to make up a company, मैं company form कराता हूँ, उसकी formation के लिए chartered accountant engage करता हूँ, to whom I pay the fees, he charges GST on that. So I can take voluntary registration prior to the engagement of the chartered accountant for forming a company. Invoice is being received, I am registered. So once I am registered, I am eligible for the credit, I can claim that credit also. Then friends, we are coming to section 16.2. 16.1, as I told you, is the maximum wide clause which can be there. Now comes the restrictive clauses. 16.2 says, notwithstanding anything contained in this section. They are not talking about 16.1, they are talking about the whole section 16. No registered person shall be entitled to credit in case it does not satisfy these conditions. Now there are conditions for the availment of the credit, and very clearly says, notwithstanding anything contained in this section, non-obstinate clause. We'll go those conditions one by one. But what is really important is, one must understand, now the restrictions have started coming in. And the first condition is, he is in possession of a tax invoice or debit note issued by the supplier registered under this act, or such other tax-paying document. To understand what are the other tax-paying document, you can refer to Rule 36. I can tell you it is tax invoice, it is debit note, it is bill of entry, it is invoice issued by the ISD. So all these things are being specified in Rule 36. So the first thing is, you must have a copy of tax invoice, debit note, ISD invoice, or bill of entry. Whatever conditions I am going to discuss with you, kindly appreciate. All conditions has to be satisfied cumulatively. It is not like that you are having an invoice and you are eligible for the credit. Other conditions also need to be satisfied. Maybe not at the point when I am availing the credit or utilizing the credit. All these conditions need not be satisfied at that point of time. For example, when the invoice is being issued and the goods are sent through e-way bill by QTA, it will take certain time to receive the goods. The second condition is, I must have received such goods and services. So these conditions are to be satisfied cumulatively, no doubt about that, but not at the same time. Now, अश्विनी जी कह रहे थे एक साल में जो अमेंडमेंट हुई है उसको आप हाईलाइट करो, and keeping in view the instructions given by my younger brother अश्विनी जी, हम उसको हाईलाइट कर रहे हैं. Now there is a clause being inserted in 16(2) AA clause, and this clause has been introduced in 1st January 2022, and it says जिस इनवॉइस या डेबिट नोट पे आप क्लेम कर रहे हैं आईटीसी, वो आपका सप्लायर फर्निश करेगा in the statement of outward supplies, that is GST 1 under section 37, and such details has been communicated to the recipient, that means to the recipient who intend to claim the credit, in the manner specified. Now this is one condition. Why this condition is being introduced from 1st January 2022? There was the rule 36(4), which we'll discuss after this couple of slides, which was putting up certain restrictions for availment of credit. You cannot claim more than 120%, 110%, 105% of the amount appearing in year 2A. The argument was whether these conditions put up by the rule can exceed the mandate given in the section which deal with the eligibility of credit. The answer was certainly no. So the government, wide notification number 39/2021, notified this section and provided a statutory backing to the rule. You all know that there was a case of Bharti Airtel Limited with regard to the revision of return, which went up to Supreme Court. What happened in that case? I'll try to explain it to you. Bharti Airtel, while discharging the liability, inadvertently could not claim the credit of 938 crores. The matter went up to the High Court. They say 1, 2, 3 could not be functionalized by the government. In case that functionality would have been there, my client would have taken the credit. They said, okay, open the portal, let him revise the return. But the matter went to the Supreme Court. This judgment was reversed in favor of the revenue. Supreme Court says earlier also you have been claiming the credit, and the claim of credit as per the books of accounts 1, 2, 3 is only a facilitation measure. If it is not there, the same exercise was being done by you in the earlier law also. Now this GST law is based on the portal, so they are providing this functionality. It is only a facilitation measure, and this point was being argued, and people got a clue from there that 2A reflection is not a mandatory condition. So the government, realizing that this Supreme Court judgment also come in their way, so they have put up a condition giving the statutory backing that in order to claim the credit, your supplier must furnish the detail in GST 1, and that must be communicated to the recipient in 2B. So this is the provision which has come on 1st January 2022. Friends, मैं आपको ये भी बता दूं, जो आपके SMT 10 वगैरह आ रहे हैं मिसमैच के, जहां आपका मिसमैच है 2A में और आपके ITC availed in 3B, you can always say this 36(4) not having any mandate under the statutory provision, not valid. So we are entitled to claim, and you can also rely on the judgment of Bharti Airtel Supreme Court. Then second condition, third one, because A was already there, AA. This is again a very dangerous condition. It says you will not be entitled to credit unless otherwise you have received the goods or services are both. अरे पहली condition थी invoice, दूसरी condition थी confirmation by the supplier in the GST 1 corresponding entry in year 2B. उनका इससे कुछ नहीं होगा. You must have goods and services. Let us say there is a invoice being issued without supply of goods. You may be having the copy of that invoice, and that invoice may be uploaded in GSTR1 by the supplier. Still, you cannot get the credit unless otherwise you prove that you have received such goods or services. आज जितने भी arrest हुए हैं in this country, 938 was the figure given by the department. That was 1 month down the line approximately. Most of the arrest has been made only under this not fulfillment of this condition. It is being alleged that you have claimed the credit without receiving the goods. Whereas this condition is very, very clear, and this is there from the day one. So the onus, as I told you under section 155, is on me that I have received the goods. One can say, so far as goods are concerned, we can produce the documentary evidence in terms of GR, in terms of entry in the stock register, and then issuance of consumption for the purpose of manufacture, etc. But what can be the document in the case of services? I do agree, services are intangible in nature. So therefore, you have to keep the name, address, agreement, where the services are being provided, some evidence can be there, earth leveling, etc. So all those evidences, measurement books, etc. So all these evidences must be there. Detailed accounting record, onus is on you, and this is very, very important. And very recently, I can deal it here itself. The department has issued a circular number 171. Kindly make a note of it, with reference to the fake invoices. उन्होंने ये कहा, if the department is saying that I am issuing the invoice A for 100 rupees, tax is being charged 18 rupees, and the allegation of the department is you have issued this invoice without supply of goods. Can you charge GST from me? If you read the GST law, section 7, definition of supply, taxable event is supply. Read with charging section 9 of CGST Act, it clearly says it can be subject to tax only when there is a supply of goods and services. And if the department itself is alleging there is no supply, then how can there be a tax liability? Circular 171 में यही कहा गया, which has been issued in 1 year only. So I am focusing on that. तो उन्होंने कहा ये इसका मतलब है कि जिस आदमी ने फेक इनवॉइस की चेन शुरू की, उससे आप टैक्स नहीं ले सकते. तो क्या he is free from all the liabilities? Then where is the check and balances? How will you stop him? He will keep on issuing the invoices without supplying the goods. The department has clarified. We do admit the allegation is he has not made any supply, but at the same time, he can be subject to penalty. He can be subject to prosecution under section 132. There are certain questions. Can I take the credit on repair service of my official car? Went to enter the invoice, the bulk of whether or the date of invoice and receipt of goods, but department neither. Sir, I will deal all these questions in my deliberation. So the answer will come automatically. Keep on asking me the question. I'll modify my deliberation in that manner only. So friends, जिस आदमी ने फेक इनवॉइस का प्रोसेस शुरू किया, उसके ऊपर पेनल्टी लग सकती है 122 में, उसका प्रोसिक्यूशन हो सकता है 133 में, and the penalty is 100% the tax ought to be evaded. But there cannot be any demand for outward supply because the government itself is saying the department case is that he has issued the invoice without supply, and once the taxable event has not happened, that with charging section, how can there be demand? Now there can be a situation too, wherein this A who is issuing the invoice in favor of B who is the recipient. Now that B may be engaged into the business of receiving and supplying invoices only. उसने 100 रुपए का बिल अश्विनी जिंदल से लिया, 105 रुपए का पीयूष बंसल को दे दिया. ना उसने गुड्स ली ना उसने गुड्स दी. So if that being the situation, he has not received the supply, he is not entitled for the credit, but then there is again no liability because the allegation is Mr. Ashok Batra has issued the invoice to the Piyush Bansal for 105 rupees and has not supplied the goods. So in that case, if my credit cannot be recovered from me, if my output tax liability demand cannot be raised against me, then how I can be penalized under the law? So they have made it absolutely clear. In the case of B, who has received the invoice and issued the invoice without giving the supply of goods, he has committed two default. First, he has received the invoice without receipt of goods. Then he has committed another default by issuing the invoice without supply of goods. So he can be penalized for both these default. And every time the penalty is 100%, the tax ought to be evaded. So he is liable to pay a penalty of 200% of the tax. And he can be prosecuted in terms of section 132 twice. Once for claiming the credit without receipt of goods and secondly for issuing the invoice. So he can be subject to 200 rupees penalty, 200% of the tax as penalty, and he can be prosecuted also. Then comes third situation. A, who has issued the invoice without supply of goods, but B has consumed that credit and used that invoice for the purpose of reducing his taxable income and then make a supply to us. Again, the same situation. I have committed default. Now, there can be, I have committed default of receiving the invoice, I can be subject to penalty and prosecution. Certainly, whatever my output supply, I have already paid the tax under 3B. Then there can be situation 4. A ने invoice issue किया, B ने invoice तो A से ले लिया, लेकिन माल लिया D से. 2 नंबर में माल खरीद लिया, invoice Mr. A से ले लिया. For example, this metal industry, particularly copper one, यहाँ आपको material तो मिल जाता है कबाड़ियों से, unregistered person से. But once you are purchasing that material, in order to justify the claim of credit, you take an invoice from me. In that case, what will happen? In that situation also, that circular has clarified that once you have not paid the tax to the unregistered dealers and you have taken an invoice from Mr. A and he has not supplied you the goods, certainly the credit can be denied in your hands. So now the demand of credit is being denied for the first time where I have not paid the tax, make purchases from unregistered dealer. And once I am selling those goods, certainly I am discharging my GST liability. So in this case, my ITC, which is the topic of the day, can be denied. So ITC cannot be denied where I am buying the goods and selling the goods on paper only. But where I am buying the goods from unregistered dealer, getting the invoice from a registered dealer, in that case, my ITC will certainly be disallowed. Then friends, we can move further now. Then there is an explanation to subclause B. You must have received the goods. To explain that, if I am saying I am purchasing these goods, you kindly hand it over to my job worker, that is being treated as a receipt of goods. और अगर मैंने कोई document of title से उस goods को transfer कर दिया, wherein I want to transfer it to somebody else, even that is being treated as a receipt of goods. Then comes condition which is again being inserted from 1st July 2022. The details of input tax credit in respect of the supply communicated to such registered person under section 38 has not been restricted. आप कहेंगे ये क्या पढ़ दिया, बताइए जल्दी जल्दी. ये कंडीशन है जो अभी लगाई गई, एक न्यूली सब्स्टिट्यूटेड सेक्शन 38 लाया गया, जिसपे ये कहा कि we will communicate this GSTR1 information to you, and there are certain conditions in which you are not eligible for the credit. But अभी तक इसके rules नहीं आए हैं. So practically it is only an academic discussion. But once the rule will come, we'll analyze it. So now the government is saying that not only it is mandatory for the supplier to issue an invoice, which is being credited to your account in 2B. Further, they can restrict the credit. In spite of the fact he has recorded in GSTR1 and the amount is being reflected in your 2B. Fortunately, because these rules have not been there, so I am just skipping it to save the time, because this condition is right now not operationalized. Then comes the next condition. The payment of tax which has been charged by your supplier must be paid either in cash or through credit to the government revenue. If you look at the law prior to GST, buying dealer cannot be penalized for the fault committed by the selling dealer. It was almost a settled proposition of law. Chunilal Prashadiral, then Bharti Telecom India, then there are other judgments also. Arise India by Punjab and Haryana High Court, wherein, Delhi High Court, and SLP, the government has already been rejected, because in Delhi VAT also similar kind of provisions were there. Law was parametric. But still the government is insisting that you cannot deny a legal maxim. You cannot expect an assessor to do an impossible task. क्या आप मेरा क्रेडिट इस बात पे डिनाई कर सकते हैं कि सामने वाले ने नहीं दिया टैक्स? इसके ऊपर बहुत सारा केस लॉ डेवलप हुआ है. When I'll come to that, I'll give you the citation. In my humble opinion, it is a very impossible situation in the hands of the recipient to confirm that he has paid the tax. So in the absence of 1, 2, 3, and in the absence of any mechanism whereas I can ensure that my supplier has paid the tax, my credit cannot be denied. Unless otherwise, there is a connivance between the buyer and the seller to defraud the revenue. Then friends, we move further. For next condition is that the supplier must have filed his return on section 39, and now 3B is the official return. So you must have submitted your 3B for the month for which you're claiming the credit. Then comes certain provisions. Now we'll go to those provisions. First provision says, if you are receiving the goods in an installment, but then such goods have been received an invoice. You raise an invoice to me for 5 tons of material. That has to be given 1 metric ton per week. So firstly, you raise an invoice of 5 metric ton. Then photocopy of that along with the delivery run of 1 invoice will be accompanied along with the e-way bill. But you will be entitled to get the credit only when the last installment is received. That means 5th week, that means next month. Let us state the supplier started from 1st April. So the last installment has been received in the 1st week of May. So your eligibility for credit will come in the month of May only. Now comes the most controversial condition, and that condition is wherein a recipient has to make payment for the value of supplier and GST charge thereon within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice, not from the delivery of goods. So I'm supposed to make the payment to the supplier within 180 days, 100 rupees invoice, 18 rupees GST. I must pay 118 rupees within 180 days. In case I fail to do so, goods have been purchased in the month of April, 6 months stops at 30th September. So I have to reverse the credit in the month of October. And I have, in case that credit has been utilized by me, then I have to pay interest at the rate of 18%. In case that credit has not been utilized by me and that balance is appearing in my electronic credit ledger continuously for 6 months, in that case, I am not liable to pay the interest. This mechanism of 180 days is self-discipline mechanism. There is no system on the portal who can identify and tell you that this is the payment you have not made because of the lack of information which is available on the portal. So you have to do it yourself. 180 days from the date of invoice. If you are making payment proportionally, then your credit eligibility will also be proportionate. 18% is the rate of interest now. As I told you earlier on, wrong availment of credit was subject to 24% interest, and that section being amended now. Fails to pay the supplier within 180 days. So this terminology has given debate to various issues, whether I can make the payment through book adjustment. One of the authority of advanced ruling says yes. Another question is failure to pay to the supplier will arise when there is a liability to pay and I fail to pay. One can argue if I am buying the goods and there is a credit period for more than 180 days, am I liable to pay the tax? So my amount has not become due. My supplier has already given me credit for 9 months. Or I am supposed to make the payment in installments spreading over more than 6 months and I have not defaulted in making payment of tax. So in the case of installment, one can argue or the department can argue, आपने 6 इंस्टॉलमेंट में 70% पैसा दे दिया, 180 days में 70 आ गया, 30% credit will be disallowed. So there are professional views who subscribe that failure to pay will start only when I'm liable to pay. In my humble understanding, that interpretation I don't accept. In my humble understanding, the language is very loud and clear. Within 180 days, you have to pay the value of supply and tax to the supplier. It is being done to safeguard the interest of small and medium enterprise. Big companies commanding their position don't make the payment to them. And once it is being done, this proviso is to safeguard their interest. So in my humble opinion, the argument that once I am liable to pay 180 days will start from that place, I don't subscribe to that view. Whether act of God, force majeure clause is there. Force majeure clause is normally in the agreement between the two private parties and not under the law. In law, if there is some kind of situation like COVID, etc., then we have seen Supreme Court suo moto has given extension for the filing of appeal and for certain action. So, in my humble opinion, अगर लॉ में फोर्स माजरा क्लॉज जो है वो सिर्फ प्राइवेट पार्टीज में होती है, अगर लॉ में कोई ऐसी चीज हो जाती है और गवर्नमेंट कॉन्शियस है कि इस तरह की कोई चीज हो गई है, then they have to issue the notification or the Supreme Court has to take cognizance of it and pass an order for the condonation. So in my humble opinion, this act of God, even if it happens and there's no relief being given by the revenue by issuance of a notification or by the court, this 180 days will be applicable. This limit of 180 days shall apply, not apply in the case of RCM. क्योंकि मुझे RCM का क्रेडिट ही तभी मिलना है जब मैंने पेमेंट कर देनी है. दूसरा, when the transaction is between two distinct persons of the same pair. मैं लुधियाना में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करता हूँ, मेरे शोरूम है गुड़गांव और फरीदाबाद में और नोएडा में, मैं माल वहां बेचता हूँ. So obviously, because they are the registration to the same PAN, so there is no need to make the payment. So this provision is not applicable to that also. Now they say that once you make the payment, third provision says, then certainly when you make the payment, you are again eligible to claim the credit. 100 रुपए का इनवॉइस, 18 रुपए, हम बात कर रहे थे 1 अप्रैल को इनवॉइस इशू हुआ. जब 1 अप्रैल को इनवॉइस इशू हुआ, 30 सितंबर तक मैंने पेमेंट नहीं की, मैंने 10 दिसंबर को कर दी. अक्टूबर में मैं इसको रिवर्स करूंगा, along with interest पे करूंगा, and then I will avail it in the month of December when I'll make payment for the value of services which is around. Now comes, जैसे आप कह रहा था कि it is optional scheme, capital goods में अगर आपने GST का अमाउंट कैपिटलाइज कर दिया, इनकम टैक्स का बेनिफिट ले लिया, तो आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. 16(4) is applicable to NBFC and banking sector where relief was being, this is what time limit for availment of credit. So this is a very, very important section. Very recently, there is an amendment. Earlier on, I was eligible to claim the credit up to due date of filing the return for the month of September following the financial year to which the credit relates. अब क्या हो गया? अब उन्होंने कहा 30 नवंबर तक है, यानी अक्टूबर की रिटर्न में भी आप ये क्रेडिट ले सकते हैं. But then this time limit is sacrosanct. I was telling you when I started dealing with the basic principles of ITC. वहां मैंने कहा था ALD Automobile Supreme Court, it is a conditional one, so you have to satisfy. Another controversy was there whether this credit availment has to be in the books of account or it has to be in 3B. Earlier on, I used to say that the availment of credit has to be done in the books of accounts only. 3B is only a reporting requirement. But as the judgments are flowing, I think my point of view is not being accepted by the court, and department is also of the similar view that once you file the 3B and appropriate the credit, that is the time when you are availing the credit. So friends, because मैंने मौका पे कई बार इस टॉपिक पे बोला है, शायद 2 बार पहले, तो मेरा व्यू एक्सेप्ट नहीं हो रहा कोर्ट्स में. तो अब मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, as per the courts and as per the department, availment of credit has to be in the books of accounts. So before we move to the other section, let us go to the questions and answer those questions first. Sir, can ITC be availed if RCM is paid on import after show cause notice? As I told you, if you are being served with the show cause notice, inquiry is being done, and section 74 is invoked, certainly you will not be eligible for the credit of ITC on the tax which you have paid under RCM. Can I take the credit on repair service of my official car? No, sir. When we'll come to section 17.5, I'll make it clear, but my answer in short is you're not eligible. It is a block credit under section 17.5. Then Vipul Arora ji कह रहे हैं, when to enter the invoice in books of account, whether on the date of invoice or date of receipt of goods. So you can do whatever. Invoice can be recorded on the date of receipt of invoice also. But because stock records, you will enter only with the receipt of goods, and your eligibility will come only when the goods have been received. Let us say the invoice has been received on 28th of March. Goods have been received on 4th of April. So it is better to claim the credit in the month of April only. One can argue these conditions need not be satisfied. On the date when I am claiming the credit, 180 days is there to make the payment, etc. I have to file my return, which will be 20 days after the expiry of the month. My supplier has to make the payment, which he will not make on day-to-day basis. He will make the payment of tax only when he will file his return. Those arguments can be there, but in order to avoid the litigation, better to claim the credit in the month in which the receipt of goods are being received. But department denied that. What is this question? I don't know. I'm not able to understand. Jajmeet Singh जी, आप रेस कर सकते हैं, मैं आपसे पूछ सकता हूं, या आप जब मेरा सेशन खत्म होगा तो 10-15 मिनट हम रखेंगे क्वेश्चन आंसर के लिए, उस टाइम पूछ सकते हैं. Goods purchased from unregistered person by registered person, whether RCM applicable or not. Sir, you all know when the law was there, then 9.3 and 5.3 says you have to 13th October 2017, this provision was deferred, and now you are liable to pay tax when you are receiving supplies from unregistered dealer only in the case of development right, etc. That is from 1st April 2019 and other services being notified. Specified supplies only. Friends, let me make it very clear to you. Then there is 9.4 or 5.4 RCM also, which is in respect of specified supplies of services. Then there are certain goods have been notified where you're liable to pay tax under reverse charge. So on those supplies, you need to be cautious. You have to pay the tax under reverse charge. 9.4. 9.3 is being deferred from 13th October 2017 and 1st April 2019. Only couple of services have been brought into the picture of reverse charge. Then there is a question of Mr. Sandeep Jangra. Goods purchased from unregistered devices, whether RCM applicable. person in regular scheme, person in composition scheme. Sir, either it is composition scheme or it is regular scheme. Once you are registered, you are registered. There is no difference between the one who is discharging the liability under composition scheme or one who is discharging the liability under regular scheme. They simply say registered person. So of course, 9(4) supplies, let us say, transportation of goods by road or advocate services. If advocate services have been received by a registered person, either he discharging the liability under regular scheme or composition scheme. In both the situation, he will be liable to pay tax under reverse charge. If amount is not paid within 1 day, it will be added output tax liability or test. There is no provision for reversal. In fact, if you look at the whole GST law, they say it has to be added to your liability. So अगर आपने ITC यूटिलाइज कर लिया है तो आपके पास कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है, आप DRC 03 में पेमेंट करेंगे. But if the ITC is already appearing in the credit ledger, then of course you can reverse the credit. If one item is taxable at 12%, but by mistake supplier charge 18%, recipient pays. Recipient is entitled to the tax of 18%. I have stated very clearly, and I have given a couple of judgments also in my slides. Then Gagan Saluja, sir, 180 days payment is bill wise or account wise? It has to be bill wise only. आपको 3 बिल मिले अप्रैल, मई, जून में 100 रुपए, 18 रुपए GST, 300 प्लस 354 रुपए टोटल हो गया. आपने अप्रैल वाले की पेमेंट अगस्त में कर दी, मई वाले की सितंबर में, जून वाले की अक्टूबर में, तो तीनों के 180 डेज के अंदर पेमेंट हो गई. There is no problem. So it has to be calculated bill wise. Sir, I have a doubt regarding delivery of goods for claiming ITC. Whether constructive delivery is considered as delivery of goods for claim. I was reading that first proviso when the goods is deemed to have been received. For example, your example we can take. For example, we have imported goods on FOB terms and the goods are with transporter and have not reached the premises yet. In this case, whether could we assume that the transporter is holding goods on our behalf? So transporter may be holding goods in your behalf, but these goods has to be received. For example, in excise law, it was very clearly written in the factory. यहाँ ऐसा नहीं लिखा हुआ है, but you have not received the goods, they are still with the transporter. In my humble opinion, the department can deny the credit. But as I told you, all these conditions need not be satisfied on the same day. So you can take all those arguments which I have already told to you. आप वो argument ले सकते हैं और आप on the basis of the invoice you can claim the credit, but that can be subject to litigation. But in case you claim the credit in the month in which the goods are physically received in your office or factory, undoubtedly there will be no litigation. Sir, suppose I have 5 units and I FF the goods to another unit for sale. Can 180 days proviso applicable? Suppose I have 5 units and I TF the goods to another unit for sale. I'm not able to understand Gagan Saluja ji. अगर आप मुझे clarify कर पाए तो मैं आंसर दे पाऊंगा. जुमीज सिंह का आंसर आ गया. ओके सर. केस बुला बने सर. दिस इज वेरी गुड प्रेजेंटेशन. थैंक. और छोड़ दीजिए सर, क्वेश्चन की बात करिए. Kindly clarify the present stand of the court on ITC on construction of building meant for earning rental income. Okay. Can ITC be claimed on bill of entry not reflected in 2B? Sir, bill of entry can never be reflected in 2B. IceGate has yet to start that system. You can certainly claim the credit, no doubt about that. Sir, if RCM is paid after November month of next year pertaining to previous financial year, is such ITC eligible? You want to say whether the time limit prescribed under section 16 subsection 4 is sacrosanct. In my humble opinion, yes. As I told you in the case of ALD Automobile, Supreme Court also says it's a conditional right to you and you have to satisfy the conditions. If we are not satisfying, if there are exceptional circumstances, then the relief may be allowed to you by the constitutional courts only, that is High Court or Supreme Court. Till tribunal, there is no doubt this credit is not permissible to you. So you have to put out a special case before the constitutional court Because those courts, that is High Court and Supreme Court, have the power to go beyond what has been written in the books, and they can, on the principle of natural justice or any other principle, can give you the benefit. For example, facility of payment of installment is not permissible if it is an admitted tax. But there are judgment now, Madhya Pradesh High Court, etc., where they have given the facility to pay the tax for admitted also in installment, looking to the peculiar circumstances of the case. The court may say, if we are allowing this payment looking to special circumstances, and this case may not be quoted as a precedent, and it cannot be quoted as a precedent for the purpose of seeking relief in other cases. That can be a situation, but you need to go to the constitutional court. If firm was declared bogus by the department, whether department has any authority to declare any firm as bogus, they might have assumed it is a bogus firm, but how can they declare it anyway? But before that, the recipient actually received the goods and returns are duly filed by the supplier and payment also made. Can the ITC be recovered from the recipient? Certainly not. Who is the department to declare any firm a bogus? If the transaction is genuine, you are having all the documentary evidence to support this, and there is no contrary evidence being produced by the department. देखिए दोस्तों, फेक इनवॉइस में ये तो हर आदमी कहता है, मेरे पास इनवॉइस है, मैंने पेमेंट की है, मेरे पास ईवे बिल है, और मैंने उस गुड्स को स्टॉक में रिकॉर्ड किया और आगे बेचा है. But once the department comes and prove that the vehicle number which you have mentioned belongs to a scooter, or the vehicle, when you are claiming it was carrying the goods, was standing in another part of the country, and we can prove it through RFID technology, or if the supplier itself gave a statement, I have not made the supplies in 3-month period, I have made a turnover of 20 crore, and whatever money has come on the same date is being transferred to the mastermind. Then what is the answer to that? So this issue, whether the transaction is genuine or not, can be decided when we hear both the parties. So one thing, as a professional, it is very clear, if there is no contrary evidence available with the department and you prove that your credit is genuine, undoubtedly department cannot declare any firm as a bogus, and you are entitled for the credit. Invoice payment not made within 180 days, but ITC credit available in portal. Can department charge interest? Interest is compensatory in nature. If somebody has suffered the liquidity issue and you are making the payment subsequent to that, how can you say, I will not pay the interest? But yes, in case there is a credit of, let us say, 18 rupees, which you have claimed, for which you have not made payment to the supplier within 180 days. But in your credit ledger, 18 rupees is appearing for all these months, and even today it is there. Then certainly you are not liable to pay interest. If 18 rupees sometimes has become negative, and most of the time it is there in your credit ledger, so the period in which it becomes negative, you are liable to pay interest only for that period. Sir, if creditor balance is debited by way of loan account, will it be sufficient discharge of liability? Okay. If it is not a colorable device, a same transaction, certainly it can be done. For example, I was quoting one authority of advance ruling where they say that payment can be made through book adjustment. आपने उस आदमी को पैसे देने भी थे, लेने भी थे, आपने नेट करके दे दिए, understandable है. Similarly, in the case of export also, this US come, I am exporting goods and importing goods from the same party. Net payment I have made. So in number of judgment, the court has said, because net payment has been made, so it is being treated as $100 have been received, 80 has been paid, to 20 rupees, which was to be retained by the country, has been received. So that is a deemed payment of foreign exchange. In this transaction, if this is a sham transaction, the intention is only to claim the credit. But if there is a genuine situation, for example, you have been buying goods from somebody, he says, okay, I am in difficulty, मैंने आपके 5,000 रुपए देने, आप मुझे 5 लाख रुपए देने, आप मुझे 10 लाख का लोन दे दो, and you are making payment of loan under a separate agreement, check is being transferred and all that. And then he says, out of this loan, you adjust the amount which I am liable to pay to you. Certainly that can be done, but the onus to prove that's a genuine loan and it is not a colorable device or sham transaction only to claim the credit lies on you. Sir, I have 5 units all over India and only 1 unit sent the goods for sale to another 4 units. Can 180 days provision applicable to 4 units as account of all units? Sir, I told you it is not applicable in those cases where the supply has been made by one registration number to another registration number with the same PAN. This provision is not applicable. I have already explained it to you. Anyway, if it is these registration number under the single PAN, no problem. My query is that if RCM for 21-22 was not deposited in financial year 21-22, neither deposited nor this RCM was deposited in December, can I claim this RCM? Certainly you can claim that ITC for the RCM payment in 3B of December 2022. Because ITC payment under a reverse charge payment has to be made in cash, and your eligibility comes only when you make payment of the tax. Once that payment has been made in December, you can certainly claim that ITC in 3B of December 22. Friends, my conviction is the success of the seminar is where the answer of the queries are being answered. So I'm answering this, and whatever time will be left, we will discuss other provisions. So, Asim Khanna, in case of export of goods, now GST is charged on sea freight by custom agent and such ITC is shown in our 2B and place of supplies other territory. Can we claim ITC as our place of registration is in Punjab, as place of supply is mentioned to this other country? So place of supply means in the case of transportation of goods where the goods are destined. So obviously if the goods are going from Ludhiana, yani Punjab, to USA, the place of supply will be outside. So it will determine the nature of tax. That means you're liable to pay IGST. So once the IGST is paid, you can claim the credit. No doubt about that. Sir, if supplier has credit policy more than what? Sir, I have already told you and I have discussed this detail. I think you may not be available at that point of time. There is a difference of opinion. One view is if the amount has not become due, how can I fail to pay? But looking to the language of the section and the intent of the proviso to safeguard the interest of small and medium enterprises, in my humble opinion, it is a litigating issue and I am against it. Sir, suppose supplier issue the invoice to us on 29th March and receive the goods on 4th April. As per your view, we can take credit on April month return, but supplier upload the bill into to Sir, how does it make a difference? You can always file a reconciliation for that. आप वो भी क्रेडिट क्लेम करते रहे हैं क्योंकि ये रूल 36(4) तो आया था सितंबर 2019 में, उससे पहले अपने बुक्स का अकाउंट से भी करते रहे हैं. सो उसमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. अगर आप लेना चाहें तो आप तो मार्च में भी ले सकते हैं, बट एज आई टोल्ड यू बेटर कोर्स विल टू टेक इन द मंथ ऑफ अप्रैल if amount involved is not so huge, because in that case you are postponing the credit for which the department can never have any objection. What is the time limit of claiming the ITC against import of goods, whether the time limit remains the same as is applicable in the case of normal ITC? Yes, undoubtedly. But because in the case of import of goods, you file the bill of entry and discharge the IGST. So before payment, that amount is not due to you. So once you pay the IGST and you show it in your return, then you can utilize it as per your own wish. Some registered dealers take receipts in their personal saving account so that it is not exposed to GST. Whether this is correct? धर्मेश सिंह जी, आपने सप्लाई की बिजनेस में पेमेंट का उसकी लायबिलिटी से या उसके क्रेडिट से क्या मतलब है? आपकी एक दुकान है, आप उसमें माल बेच रहे हैं और आपने एक पीस जो बेचा उसकी पेमेंट सेविंग अकाउंट में ले ली और 99 पीसेस की पेमेंट ही करंट अकाउंट में. In my humble opinion, when you have sold 100 unit, irrespective of the fact whether you are receiving the payment in current account of the firm or in personal account, does not make a difference, and that supply is subject to GST. And if recovered later on, you can be subject to interest and penalty. Whether a person can have two proprietorship, one is registered under GST. रणजीत सिंह जी, ये जो लिमिट है पैन नंबर वाइज है, और प्रोप्राइटर चाहे कितनी भी सोर्स ऑफ इनकम ले, उसका पैन नंबर वही होता है. And for the purpose of eligibility of ITC, we have to look at the aggregate turnover by him. It is absolutely incorrect. Sir, if RCM is paid after November month of the next year pertaining to previous, is such, I have already answered this. There was already a question wherein they have said, I am making payment in December 22. Yes, you can claim the credit. If IGST input has been wrongly claimed as CGST and SGST input, if IGST input wrongly claimed as CGST and GST, I am not able to understand, because the credit of IGST can be used for the discharge of any liability. So once this IGST can be used, so even if you show it as CGST and SGST in your 3B, but it was IGST, there is no loss of revenue, according to my understanding. So it is only a procedural mistake. And once it is being pointed to the department, you can explain it to them. It is only a clerical error. If there is error in invoice number, such as missing suffix or prefix being recorded in the tax invoice, and that uploaded by supplier in GST 1, whether ITC can be denied. As I told you, these kind of procedural mistake will not deny you a substantive right. But at the same time, once it has been pointed out by the department, then you must ask your supplier to correct that mistake in the subsequent GST 1. So that mistakes need to be rectified. Of course, credit cannot be denied. Even if it is being done by the department, you must litigate and ultimately get the things corrected. You will get the benefit of ITC. What can be the remedy? Amit Sharma. Aapki question here. If IG is wrongly claimed as remedy, there is no need for anything. Repair agency has received parts from company for the purpose of use of those parts in the inter-warranty product. Agency charging only service part from the company. Repair agency has received parts. देखिए, warranty is being given by the manufacturer. So once he is receiving the supplies from somebody or raw material to manufacture the product which is giving in warranty, he is certainly eligible for the credit. Once that part has come free to you and the company is charging only service tax on the service portion, so you have not paid tax on the supply of those parts. If you have not paid tax, then how can claim the credit? Gopi Kishan ji, if I am audible to you, are you satisfied with the reply or you want to ask something more? Time limit for availment of credit is for books of accounts of 3B. As I told you, initially I was of the view it should be books of accounts, but now the courts are with the view of the department, it should be 3B. If a person dealing exclusively in exempted goods opens a branch office in another state, will be required to obtain registration for interstate movement of goods? No, because you are dealing with exempted goods. So once exempted goods, then you are being exempted under section 23. आज गेहूं है, अगर वो टैक्सेबल नहीं है, तो पंजाब का व्यापारी अगर हरियाणा में बेचता है या दिल्ली में बेचता है, तो उस पर कोई जीएसटी नंबर लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. Can we cancel bill of March 21? Sir, why not? Cancel the bill. Reason? If it is deficiency of service, goods being destroyed in the process, what is the reason? In any case, you can always issue a commercial credit note. The only problem is for reversing the invoice, there is no procedure for cancelling the invoice. You have issued an invoice for 100 rupees and 18 rupees as GST. Now you want to reverse it. So either you have to issue the credit note saying this transaction is being nullified. So once I give this commercial credit note, crediting to the party and debit to the sale account, certainly I can do that. But then in that case, my output tax liability will not be reduced. In case I want to issue the credit note in terms of section 34, where I want to reduce my output tax liability, then you have to prove that this credit note has been issued within the time frame and the recipient has already reversed the credit in relation to that transaction. But why we are doing so? Cancelling is not being permitted under GST law. You have to issue only a credit note, which can be either commercial or in terms of section 34. Sir, a person dealing in exempted products currently, but is planning to launch a taxable product and has incurred pre-launch expenditure, can credit be denied for reason that no taxable supply was made? Obviously, boss, once we are claiming the credit, any supply used exclusively for exempt supply, I cannot avail the credit. Section 17, I could not find time to deal with that, but I'll make this proposition very clear by explaining to you in very simple terms. आपने ये कहा कि मैं एक प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूं जिस पे टैक्स नहीं है, but then I am developing a product on which I'll be liable to pay the tax. So obviously आपने जो खर्चे किए उसके लिए या जो आपने प्री लॉन्च पे जो खर्चा किया वो क्रेडिट आपको ड्यू है. पहली बात तो ये है कि this credit is available to you only when you are a registered dealer. पहले तो आप अपने आप को रजिस्टर्ड डीलर बनाए, रजिस्टर्ड करवाए, फिर उस क्रेडिट को अवेल करें. बस उस क्रेडिट को आप यूटिलाइज कहाँ करेंगे? जब आपने कोई सेल ही नहीं की, आपने प्रोडक्ट की, तो दिस क्रेडिट कैन नॉट बी यूटिलाइज. टेक इट कैरी फॉरवर्ड. सो वन दैट प्रोडक्ट इज लॉन्च एंड यू आर मेकिंग दिस सप्लाई वेयर देयर इज आउटपुट टैक्स लायबिलिटी, यू कैन सर्टेनली यूज दिस क्रेडिट. मैंने आपसे पहले भी कहा था कि एनी एक्टिविटी इन रिलेशन टू कमेंसमेंट ऑफ बिजनेस और क्लोजर ऑफ बिजनेस is also falling in one of the clause of business. So you are carrying out a business and the course of business you can claim it. Kanav ji, आप ये confirm करिएगा whether you are satisfied this reply or you want further more clarification. As Gopi Kishan has said, yes, I am satisfied. Is GST chargeable on advance payment? If yes, then correct. देखिए, advance payment once I received for the supply of service, I am liable to pay tax. Advance payment received for the supply of goods, I am not liable to pay the tax. So once I am not liable to pay the tax in the case of goods, the question of credit in the hands of the recipient does not arise. In the case of services also, this credit cannot be claimed by the other party for the simple reason because he has not received the services, and this is one of the conditions in section 62 for the purpose of availment of. So the credit is not available to the party who is making the payment, that is the recipient of supply. But yes, you are liable to pay tax on the advance payment when it is respect to the supply of services, and that too taxable. एक डॉक्टर को आप एडवांस दे देंगे तो उसकी लायबिलिटी नहीं आएगी, बट हाँ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के पास 1 लाख का चेक आ गया तो आपको उस पे 18,000 रुपये टैक्स जमा कराना है, और आपके क्लाइंट को क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा because the condition that he must have received the goods and services is not being satisfied. If the supplier has forgotten to generate an e-way bill against the invoice, but he has filed GST 13B, then can receive it. How can you move the goods without e-way bill? If the supplier has forgotten, your transporter can generate the e-way bill, or even the buyer can generate the e-way bill. If the goods are being found out or stuck somewhere, then you can be subject to penalty under section 129, or your goods can be confiscated under section 130. But somehow I assume, सोनू जी, कि ये माल आपका किसी तरह से पहुंच गया और रास्ते में कोई रुकावट नहीं है. Then once you have received that material and you have a record, this is the truck who has delivered me the goods, certainly even in the absence of e-way bill, you can claim the credit. Sir, if a supplier has taken registration, say in Haryana, from where he deals in taxable goods, now he wants to operate from Punjab also, where he deals in supply of non-taxable / exempt goods only. will he be compulsory liable to take registration under section 24? Being a DDP means, or can he take benefit of? देखिए पंजाब में you are making a supply and that supply is exempted. There is no need for the registration in Punjab unless otherwise there is a transaction with the head office of a taxable goods. You can certainly take benefit of section 23(2) in Punjab state. Shall I have to pay GST on sale of capital goods before 5 years where such capital goods are used for the manufacture of exempted goods and I have also not claimed ITC on the purchase of such capital goods? Sir, as I told you, the claim of ITC is an optional thing. You might have capitalized the GST for the purpose of claiming depreciation. Once you have not claimed the credit, that does not mean there will be no tax, there will be no GST liability on the sale of capital goods. So once you are selling the goods and the transactional value, you are liable to pay the tax if it is more than the benefit, if more than the value as calculated, taking the life of the capital goods as 5 years. फॉर एग्जांपल देता हूँ, आपने 100 रुपए की कैपिटल गुड्स खरीदी थी, 18 रुपए टैक्स दिया था, आपने भले ही क्रेडिट उसका नहीं लिया, आप उसको 4 साल के बाद बेच रहे हो, तो अगर ट्रांजैक्शनल वैल्यू 22 रुपए की है और इसकी वैल्यू assuming the life of the capital asset remains only 20, then you have to pay tax on 22 rupees. If it is 18 rupees transactional value, then you are liable to pay tax on 20 rupees. I have already given this example. I am giving once again also, so kindly make a note of it. While raising e-invoice, invoice details were incorrect. While in GSTR 1, invoice details are corrected and reflected in GSTR 2. As I told you, e-invoice is no, in fact, an invoice raised by the supplier either manually or electronically on which IRN number is being received. The only purpose of this transaction is your transaction is being reported on the portal. So if that correction is being certified in GSTR 1 and inadvertent on e-invoice, you can certainly claim the credit. Sir, it is the 1/3 portion of supply on account of commercial unit by a builder is to be considered as exempt supply for the purpose. मुकेश जी, आपका क्वेश्चन नहीं समझ में आया. आप ये कहना चाहते हैं शायद 1/3 portion of the supply on account of commercial unit by a builder. देखिए, अगर आप 1/3 portion लैंड ओनर को दे रहे हैं कमर्शियल प्रॉपर्टी का इन लिeu ऑफ 2/3 अनडिवाइडेड पोर्शन इन द लैंड, तो मेरा ये मानना है कि आपको क्रेडिट सिर्फ 1/3 का मिलेगा. 2/3 तो आपने अपने लिए कंस्ट्रक्शन की है, and once you will sell it, then certainly you can claim the credit out of that. मैं जहां तक समझ पा रहा हूं, there may be a collaboration agreement between the landowner and the developer. डेवलपर ने एक लैंड डेवलप की, 1/3 सप्लाई कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को दे दी फ्लैट्स की, 2/3 अपने पास रख दी. तो 2/3 कमर्शियल है तो इस पर तो टैक्स पूरा लगेगा, 12% ऑफ द ग्रॉस वैल्यू, 1/3 डिडक्शन फॉर द सेल ऑफ लैंड. उसमें आप जो भी क्रेडिट है वो ले लेंगे, और बाकी जो कंस्ट्रक्शन सर्विसेज आप इसको दे रहे हैं तो उसका भी आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा, बिकॉज यू हैव टू पे टैक्स ऑन द कंस्ट्रक्शन सर्विसेज गिवन टू द लैंड ओनर on 1/3 portion of supply of commercial flats. So you will be entitled for the full credit. Whether incorrect details in e-invoice can lead to defective document leading. So they can say so, but in case it has been corrected, I have already explained it to you, you can get the benefit. DDP means deemed distinct person. This was in relation to, I think I have already answered it. If हेमंत सिंगला जी, अगर आपकी बात आपको क्लियर नहीं हुई है और आप कहना चाहते हैं तो उसको दोबारा क्वेश्चन को लिख दीजिए. I'll read it once again. GST number assigned to central and state tax officer issue notice for scrutiny of returns and proceed further to issue show cause notice. One legal. अगर जीएसटी नंबर सेंटर का है और कोई इन्वेस्टिगेशन स्टेट ने इशू की है, तो अभी एक सर्कुलर आया है डिपार्टमेंट का, अगर आपने देखा हो, So in that case, maybe the state tax officer may issue you the show cause notice, but all subsequent show cause notices will be issued by the center. You can challenge the jurisdiction, but I don't know. Read that circular, which will clarify your doubt, I'm sure. And now the government has legalized as per their view. Of course, those circulars are not binding on you. You want to say that he has acted without jurisdiction. Certainly, you can challenge it, but kindly read that circular before you take any stand on it. Sir, the assessee is registered and has certainly availed ITC but never utilized it because of exempted sales. But it took 2 years for research work and no sales were made during the period under audit. Department insisting the assessee have failed to these owners to prove eligibility. I'm not able to understand. Assessee was registered. He was claiming the credit because he was doing only research and development. And now, once the liability has come, you can certainly avail that credit. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा, बिजनेस की डेफिनेशन में जाके उनको बताओ, any activity in relation to commencement of business is also there. But आप जब ये कहेंगे कि ये exempted sale थी, ये समझ में नहीं आया. अगर exempted sale थी, तो exempted sale में जो supply directly use हुई है, उसका तो क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा ना. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आपने कोई exempted sale की गेहूं की, या मान लीजिए कोई भी प्रोडक्ट विच इज नॉट सब्जेक्ट टू जीएसटी, देन एनी सप्लाई यूज एक्सक्लूसिवली. आपने गेहूं की सेल की और गेहूं की ट्रांसपोर्टेशन पे जो आपने बिल दिया, आप उसका क्रेडिट क्लेम करना चाहे तो वो तो नहीं मिलेगा. सो एनी सप्लाई यूज्ड एक्सक्लूसिवली फॉर एग्जम्प्टेड सप्लाई, द क्रेडिट इज नॉट अवेलेबल. 17, apportionment of credit is only with regard to the common services. Sir, whether ITC with respect to repair or removal putty specifically building is available or blocked. Kindly read 17(5)(c) and D. अगर आपकी रिपेयर की वैल्यू को आपने कैपिटलाइज कर दिया है तो ये आईटीसी ब्लॉक है. बट अगर आपने उस रिपेयर को कैपिटलाइज ना करके प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस में डेबिट किया है तो आपको क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा, क्योंकि जो ब्लॉकेज ऑफ क्रेडिट है वो टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ कैपिटलाइजेशन. आपने 10 करोड़ की बिल्डिंग थी, 10 लाख रुपए रिपेयर पे खर्च किए, उस पे 1,80,000 रुपया आपने जीएसटी दिया. अगर आपने 11,80,000 रुपए को प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस में लिया है तो आपको 1,80,000 का क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा. बट अगर आपने कंसिडरिंग इट एज ए मेजर रिपेयर आपने 10 लाख रुपए उसको कैपिटलाइज कर दिया तो भी आपको 1,80,000 रुपए आपने आईटीसी में भले ही डाल दिया हो, वो आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा, बिकॉज दैट इज ए ब्लॉक क्रेडिट. So block credit is to the extent of capitalization. So the whole amount being claimed in profit and loss account, that is 10 lakh rupees, you can avail the credit of 180. If this 10 lakh rupees has been capitalized, then irrespective whether 180 has been capitalized or not, you are not eligible for the credit. I hope I am clear, Rachit ji. Then comes Gopi Kishan ji. काफी तरह से क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं. Client has wrongly charged instead of IGST. How can we pay the IGST and claim refund? देखिए, रिफंड के लिए आपको RFD 01 लगाना पड़ेगा और आप IGST DRC 03 से पेमेंट कर सकते हैं. No sir, only outward supply is taxable 18% or 2/3 portion. Only outward supply is taxable. ये शायद कंस्ट्रक्शन से रिलेटेड है मुकेश जी, मैं अभी भी नहीं समझ पा रहा हूँ. अगर आप अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं तो आप अनम्यूट करके मेरे से बात कर लें. Only outward supply is taxable at the rate on 2/3. You mean to say, I got it now. You mean to say, I am a builder. I am constructing a commercial flat which I am selling it. Let us say that is for 100 rupees. So 1/3 is the consideration for land, and on 2/3 I am paying 18% tax, that is 12 rupees. Whether this 1/3 sale of land can be considered as exempt supply, is that the question, Mukesh ji? तो बड़ा आंसर सिंपल है. मेरे हिसाब से you are not carrying out any activity wherein you are transferring certain thing. It is only for the valuation purpose. You are carrying out a taxable activity, a deeming fiction. When I am selling the commercial property, where I am receiving the consideration before the occupancy or completion certificate. So this credit cannot be denied. But anyway, I am not clear about the facts, Mukesh ji. My mobile number is 9811069299. You can call me after this lecture, maybe tomorrow. I will be able to answer. I'll understand the facts from you and then I'll give my reply. Sir, a person received compensation for termination of contract or supply of exempted product and paid GST on such compensation. Can input tax be denied on the professional charge paid for the execution of construction? I think yes, it can be denied, because that compensation is in respect to the exempted supply, and that service is never being used for the purpose of making a taxable supply. So denial, in my humble opinion, is correct by the department. So can we claim ITC on e-invoicing whose ITC is available in here, but their number is not generated? IR number? No. This is a very dangerous thing. If IR number is not generated, then it is not a proper duty being document. So the government has made it clear, if no IRN, we won't consider it a valid invoice, and in the absence of valid invoice, you may be denied the credit. Sarabjit Code, if a plastic bottle manufacturing company purchases milk coffee, can they avail ITC? Bottle manufacturing company purchase milk. First of all, there is no GST on milk. Plastic bottle manufacturing purchase coffee for what? If this coffee is being used to entertain the customer in your office, then kindly see there is a blockage with regard to the food, etc. As per my opinion, they can't avail because they are consuming it. No, that is not the parameter. I'll consume number of things, but if that is being used for the purpose of business, food has been specifically denied. That's a different issue altogether. Food. But in case I am, let us say, a client comes to my office and we go or incur certain expenditure for his entertainment or all for his consumption, and incidentally I also consume because I am with him. If it is not barred by 17(5), I can claim the credit because it is for the purpose of business. It is for me to prove that the expenditure is for the purpose of business and it is not barred under section 17(5). I think I have already crossed my time limit. Otherwise, I'll go to 17(5), Sarojit Kaur of that slide, and I'll let you know. Can I stop the question answer? Ashwini ji, मुझे guide करो कैसे करें? Sir, what can be the implication of a denial of state-wise trial balance during departmental audit? The department तो मना करेगा ही, but in case certified trial balance है, ultimately balance sheet जब merge हुई है, so they are valid document. How can they deny it? So my question is that whether 1/3 portion of supply on account of commercial unit by builder 2/3 is taxable is to be considered as 1/3. In my humble opinion, no. A person to whom one can say all my credit pertains to the construction service. Once I'm transferring the land, what kind of expenditure I'm incurring on that? And then 17(3), you must read that also. That says exempt supply will not include the activities specified in Schedule 3 except item 5. So, department can take this stand because you are paying tax only on the construction service and value of land is not included. In my humble opinion, it can be litigated and only the court can decide. In my humble opinion, credit is available. Because there is no expenditure incurred specifically for this. All the expenditure are for the purpose of construction. For the purpose of land, if there is any specific bill, you can avoid that. But in any case, rest of the expenditure is for the purpose of construction. How 1/3 of the construction activity on which I am paying tax at 18 rupees can be denied? In any case, even it is exempted supply, then all expenditure incurred directly for the purpose of providing taxable service, I am entitled for the full credit. So if I am able to prove, I am sure in the case of builder, most of these supplies will be for the purpose of construction only. So those have to be there and eligibility will be there. The only thing is there may be some common services on which they may say I treated. So the litigation will be only with respect to the common services where the department can say. And even in that case, my humble opinion is we had a very good case to contest with, except for any supply which is being used for the registration of sale deed, etc. And even that sale deed is for constructed property also. So in that case, maybe a denial of 130 is required. Rest, in my humble opinion, most of these supplies are identifiable with the taxable activity at 18%. You are eligible for the credit, and the amount which is agitated by the department will be very minuscule. A person to whom e-invoicing becomes applicable mandatory fail to raise invoicing on some bills. These bills are duly uploaded. No, sir. The only thing is you can issue the e-invoice even today. You can generate the invoice in the date when the original sale was being made. You can regenerate, you can generate this IRN number today with respect to the invoices. So that will cure the deficiency and you'll be eligible for the credit. Whether GST will be applicable on trucks sold by truck owners, is truck owner is exempt. If his exempt is not registered, certainly he is not liable to pay the tax. If the turnover remains below exemption limit, no GST liability. Sir, if a economic commerce operator providing delivery service to vendors store the goods in warehouse, let us say for 2 days, for logistic management, will be subject to any deeming fiction or deemed supply. Supply has to be taxable if there is a consideration. If that electronic commerce operator is charging certain amount for storage, etc., then certainly is liable to pay the tax. But in case he is providing this facilities vendor in order to increase the business, which is in the interest of both the parties, certainly there is no consideration. How can there be a tax liability? Sir, while preparing books, we capitalize certain expenditures such as furniture and fixtures separately and not in the name of building. For income tax purpose, otherwise, will such expenditure qualify as? Okay, you may capitalize under any head. So once you are capitalizing that expenditure and you say it is in relation to the building and you are debiting into the furniture, I really fail to understand. If the invoice is for the furniture, then there is no block credit. Block credit is only in relation to the works contract, which is being specified in section 2119. Construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation, building, fabrication or modification. Purchase of furniture kahan se aa gaya? And I don't know, how can you capitalize these kind of expenditure, repair, etc. in furniture? I really fail to understand, first of all, this accounting treatment. But the only thing is, the bar is only in relation to works contract in relation to immovable property. So any works contract in relation to movable is otherwise not barred. So Rachit ji, kindly look at the facts, look at the invoices, and then take a call. If it is the repair of furniture, then irrespective of the fact, it is not blocked. But once you capitalize the GST amount, not the repair amount, then certainly there is no GST which can be used by you. Rachit ji, try to appreciate. 100 रुपए का बिल था, 18 रुपए आपने 118 रुपए रिपेयर ऑफ फर्नीचर पे दिए. अगर आपने 118 रुपए में 100 रुपए फर्नीचर में कैपिटलाइज कर दिए तो 18 रुपए का क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा, क्योंकि ये वर्क्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इन रिलेशन टू इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी नहीं है, विच इज अ ब्लॉक क्रेडिट. बट अगर आपने 118 रुपए ही कैपिटलाइज कर दिए तो आपके पास तो आईटीसी है ही नहीं, वो तो आपने कैपिटलाइज ही कर दिया फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ क्लेमिंग डेप्रिसिएशन. Then restriction of 16(3) will be there. Once you capitalize the expenditure, you cannot take dual benefit. आप depreciation भी ले ले और ITC भी ले ले. Vinay, we have purchased some goods with e-invoice. Ashwini ji, आ जाओ यार, 6-5 हो गए. Guide me. Should I keep on continuing? We have purchased some goods with e-invoice, but supplier still not filed GST on 3B. The ITC is showing in GST at 2. Can we claim it? देखिए, मैंने आपसे कहा कि ये जो प्रोविजन आया है जनवरी 22 से आया है, अगर ट्रांजैक्शन से पहले के तो कोई झगड़ा नहीं है. और मेरा ये मानना है कि once you are having a proper duty paying document and all the conditions being satisfied, the credit cannot be denied. क्योंकि 2A तो अब आता ही I don't know. 2A का मतलब ये है कि transaction we have purchased somebody with E involved, supplier still not filed its GST. देखिए सप्लायर ने टैक्स नहीं जमा कराया, 62C की कंडीशन का वायलेशन है। तो मैंने आपसे पहले कहा और मैंने बहुत सारी जजमेंटें भी दिखाई हैं आपको, और आगे भी मेरी स्लाइड्स में बहुत सारी जजमेंट हैं जो ये कहते हैं buying dealer cannot be penalized for the fault committed by the selling dealer and you cannot expect an assessment. There may be a litigation, but ultimately you will succeed. Sir, in continuation to my last query, no doubt product is exempt, but compensation for termination in itself a taxable supply. देखिए, whether liquidated damages are subject to GST, agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act, to tolerate an act or a situation, or to do an act is different as compared to liquidated damages. For example, employee leaving the employment without serving the notice and getting some compensation from the employer. The Madras High Court has said no tax. Similarly, a contractor doing deficient construction and compensating the contractee for deficient construction services, not subject to GST. So first of all, whether this supply will get covered there. If there is a non-compete agreement, certainly liable to pay the tax. If there is an agreement, I will not run my factory because the school is there and they say the exam is going on, though I am legally eligible to do so, but I stop the factory during that hours when the school want me not to do the production and they pay me certain consideration, can be subject to tax. But liquidated damages cannot be subject to tax. So it's a slightly technical one. Try to understand, Kanavji. And in case you are not clear, kindly see the judgments in relation to liquidated damages. Now, all liquidated damages. One of the example I can tell you, I was supposed to give you 1,000 metric ton of wheat in 1 month. I gave you less wheat, and as a result of which your factory who was crushing that wheat remained vacant. I pay you certain amount. That is a liquidated damage. That is not subject to GST at all. It will not come here. So this compensation for termination, according to my understanding, is a liquidated damage, not even subject to GST. Forget about the claim. A government department is deducting GST TDS while releasing the payment to a PSU. PSU in consortium or private partners executing a project for government department. What should be done by PSU as TDS, GST should not be applicable. Sachin ji, आपका question कुछ clear नहीं है. There appears to be some contradictions. A government department is deducting GST TDS under section 51. जब वो काट रहे हैं तो क्रेडिट तो सामने वाले को मिलेगा. देखिए, if I am liable to deduct TDS, then undoubtedly I will deduct. That is section 51. If my conditions are being satisfied. Suppose the person whose tax is being deducted is not liable to pay GST or does not have a GST liability, so he can get himself registered voluntarily and take a refund for the same. Sir, is it mandatory to generate e-bill in the case of sale of four-wheeler by the authorized dealer of four-wheeler if sale is made to end customer and not to another dealer? Sir, if it is a B2C supply and all the formalities have been completed in the showroom, then it is a S&C supply, not even IGST. Where is the question of e-bill when this supply has been completed in that showroom itself? But as we are talking about a situation where I agree, I will deliver you the goods. Let us say there is a showroom in Delhi, car is being delivered to the dealer in Gurgaon. If that being so, your question is whether e-bill is required. I think department has already clarified this situation that e-bill is not required in such situation. Sir, if there is any settled duty regarding ITC on lift installed in a building. Sir, if it is a new construction or it is a replacement and that building is being leased out, in my humble opinion, you will get the credit. I think हिमांग सिंह जी ये बात कहना चाह रहे हैं कि जब एक लिफ्ट इंस्टॉल होती है तो क्या वो प्लांट एंड मशीनरी में आएगी? प्लांट एंड मशीनरी में जो डिफाइन किया गया, अगर आप उसकी डेफिनेशन को ध्यान से पढ़ेंगे तो सिर्फ यही नहीं कहता प्लांट इक्विपमेंट और इंस्ट्रूमेंट और समथिंग apparatus, but he also says it has to be used for the purpose of output supply. So kindly read that definition. In my humble understanding, if that building is not being leased out, no question of any credit. Can non-compliance of e-invoicing provision by supplier be questioned? Sir, question nahi hai. That is being treated as invalid invoice and your credit will not be allowed to you. So once you are buying the goods from a supplier who is issuing the e-invoice, kindly see you had a proper e-invoice before you avail the credit. Of course, you can litigate. I cannot be penalized for the fault committed by the selling dealer. But when the law says that for the purpose of duty paying document, you should have a valid invoice, and valid invoice has been defined. If it is a e-invoice, then it must have a IRN number. So in my humble opinion, you have no case and your credit can be at loss. The only thing is you stop the payment of GST to the supplier, saying I am suffering because of you. So once you will not pay payment of GST to your supplier, and so obviously then you are not eligible for the credit also, then the financial loss is being compensated. Otherwise, your credit will be certainly stopped by the revenue. हाँ जी अश्विनी जी, should we?
सर क्वेश्चन दो ही हैंड रेज है, मैं इनको अनम्यूट कर देता हूँ सर। अमित अग्रवाल, हाँ जी अपना क्वेश्चन पूछिए जी अमित जी। और कृष्णा सिंह, आपका है जी हैंड रेज था, कोई क्वेश्चन है जी? कृष्णा सिंह जी और अमित अग्रवाल जी, मेरे ख्याल में सर कोई क्वेश्चन है नहीं इनका। तो अगर किसी और का क्वेश्चन है तो काइंडली रेज दी हैंड्स, अदरवाइज वी विल कंक्लूड इन 2-3 मिनट मैक्सिमम।
मैं सिर्फ ना क्वेश्चन जब आंसर कर रहा था तो एक 17.5 का इशू था, मैं एक वो स्लाइड ले देता हूँ अश्विनी जी, बाकी तो हम बाद में देख लेंगे। So I am going to that slide of 17.5. This is the 17.5 slide, and I think this is what I intend to say. The following supply of good food and beverages, once it has been supplied, आपका क्वेश्चन ये था कि कस्टमर आया, हमने फूड एंड बेवरेजेस को दिए, कॉफी दी, and we are consuming. Question is not of consumption. Question is because it is a block credit in clause 17.5b, so the credit shall not be available. So kindly read this section 17.5. Even if you are satisfying all the conditions, you will not get the credit because section 17.5 starts with a non-obstinate clause. So be careful, whatever has been stated under section 16.1 or 18.1, you will not be entitled to the credit in case that credit is being blocked under section 75. I'll just go to the section. Notwithstanding anything contained in section 16.1, that is eligibility to broad criteria, and section 18.1, that is credit under special circumstances, input credit shall not be available. So not on the basis of consumption, but because coffee is being prohibited here, food and beverages, you will not get the credit. हाँ जी अश्विनी,
थैंक यू सर, बस मेरे को कंप्लीट है। अनिल गुप्ता जी आपका हैंड रेज था जी, लास्ट क्वेश्चन आप पूछ लीजिए प्लीज सर।
सर ट्रक ओनर अगर एग्जेम्प्टेड है उससे, तो अगर वो कोई ट्रक सोल करता है तो उसके ऊपर जीएसटी
नहीं लगेगा। मैंने आपको बताया आंसर करते हुए, मैंने आपका क्वेश्चन आंसर किया। सिर्फ ये देखना है कि वो ट्रक ऑनर, लेट अस से मिस्टर ए है, अब उसको ट्रक के अलावा उसकी रेंटल इनकम है 25 लाख रुपए या 30 लाख रुपए की। तो जब हम रजिस्ट्रेशन की बात करते हैं या लायबिलिटी की बात करते हैं तो हमें एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर देखना पड़ेगा। सो एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर इंक्लूड्स एग्जम्प्ट सप्लाई आल्सो।
सर एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर उनकी ज्यादा है सर, हायर चार्जेस की बिजनेस से एग्जेम्प्टेड है जो सर।
हाँ, फिर तो टैक्स लगेगा सर, 100%
लगेगा। ओके,
100%, कोई डाउट ही नहीं।
ठीक है सर, थैंक यू।
थैंक यू वेरी मच सर। मेरे ख्याल में कोई और क्वेश्चन है नहीं, तो थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर द नाइस डेलिब्रेशन। सॉरी मेरे को बीच में 15 मिनट कहीं जाना पड़ा। आई एम थैंकफुल टू नीलकांत जी कि उन्होंने, नीलकांत जी ने ये पीछे से संभाला हालांकि बत्रा जी ने संभाला क्योंकि क्वेश्चन आंसर ही चल रहे थे, तो बत्रा जी उतने में वो आपके क्वेश्चन आंसर टेकअप कर रहे थे। तो आई होप, मतलब कहते हैं आज का सेशन बड़ा डेलिब्रेशन वाइज जहाँ डिटेल्ड सेशन रहा, तो जैसे यूजुअली बत्रा जी का रहता है। आई एम ग्रेटफुल एंड थैंकफुल टू बत्रा जी कि उन्होंने आईटीसी के ऊपर जो हमारा डे फर्स्ट था उसको मेंबरों को सारी जितनी भी क्वेरीज थी वो सारी क्लियर की, और मेरे ख्याल में कोई भी क्वेरी पेंडिंग नहीं है, रादर हैंड भी कोई रेज नहीं है जिनका कोई अनआंसर्ड क्वेरी रहेगी हो। तो नाउ थैंक यू वेरी मच, थैंक यू ऑल द पार्टिसिपेंट्स फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस, एंड वी विल मीट टुमारो सेम डेट सेम टाइम विद अ डिफरेंट टॉपिक। इट में आई थिंक टुमारो इज सिद्धांत पाठक जी, वो भी बत्रा जी के चेले ही हैं, तो वो ही विल टेक अप द डिपार्टमेंटल ऑडिट। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
अच्छा जी अश्विनी जी,
थैंक यू।